Now in this video I'm making a summary of what we have seen in the second module, which is MLA. I'm giving you a couple of resources that are in a way a summary of all that we have seen, we have done, that we have read, and the learning object in the different guides that I gave you. And here I'm putting every single rule in a more synthetic way. And the first resource that I name format and core elements in the list of works cited, you have in the first part an example of the essay that we're using as a model, and I'm asking you to go to the guide and identify this example clearly and use it as the model for your essays now that you have to write. I'm discussing here the different guidelines that you presented during the second participation forum, and I'm making special emphasis on the fact that some of you complain that you are not comfortable with MLA because you have been using APA all your life at the university. I'm trying to show you here that the APA guidelines that you have been using are a watered down version of APA. That APA is a very complicated system, while MLA is a very simple one, is flexible, is user friendly, while APA is strict, very strict, and is very restrictive because it's meant for publication of dissertations and research, and that's why the guidelines are more restrictive. In the case of MLA, is more personal, and I'm giving you the guidelines here that you are using in my class. Everything is here, and you need to read this. It's gonna be like a 20 minutes reading sitting, so you're gonna have all this information clearly presented here. The font that you're using in your paper, the space, the punctuation, the use of punctuation, the margins of your document, always using as a reference the example I gave you already. And the same with the list of works cited. In the list of works cited, we have in the first day of the forum, we worked with the template from the MLA organization, where they have a page where you can practice on your own whenever you want to organize a list of works cited. This is a very friendly page as well, and this is all discussed in the second part, the core elements. I'm giving you here the link to the site, and I analyze what the core element means in terms of formatting your essay, are the information facts needed to organize a clear list of the sources that you have used in your paper. Here you have the list of elements, beginning with the author, title of the source, title of the container, other contributors, or all these information facts that are always present in every single source you work with. And here I'm even giving you an example from your guide that appears on page 18 of a source online, of an article, author's last name, first name, title of the article, name of the journal, and all the remaining information facts needed. In the case of the New Scientist, you have name of author, article, name of a journal, the New Scientist. You don't have volume issues or that. You have to jump straight into URL and the access date. You have here all that you need to know when it comes to organizing the list of works cited. And I have another example here. I'm making emphasis on the punctuation that you need to use after every information fact. After the author, you have to use the period, the same after the title of the source, then the type of the container, the name of the magazine, and you use a comma, and you keep on using commas, except that when you get here to the location, which is the URL. After that, you place a period, and then you include the access date at the end. So this is all you need to know concerning the format and the list of works cited, the core elements in the list of works cited. This is the first resource. We discussed this during the second video conference, and also in the second participation forum. The second resource that I'm giving you is a way to conclude the documentation of sources. In text, documentation of sources is naming the author in your text, in your line, and also in parentheses, and also in the list of works cited. And I organized this resource with questions that we even discussed in the second video conference. The questions are why and how to insert quotation and paraphrases, and I answered the questions later briefly. How to make the direct quote flow with your text, how to punctuate correctly your in-text documentation. This is a very common mistake. You tend to misplace punctuation. You tend to end the quote with a period and then insert the parenthetical reference at the end. That is a mistake. The parenthetical reference is part of the quote, and then you end after closing the parentheses, you have to place the end period. How to use a signal phrase to introduce a quotation or paraphrase. A signal phrase is the phrase where you introduce the quote to avoid dropping the quote. So the quote has to flow naturally into your writing. So it's important you introduce it by naming the author, and you have some examples here in the resource. How to connect the in-text documentation with the list of works cited. There has to be a direct relation between the documentation that you make in your paper, in your line. If you name the author, the last name of the author, you use the last name of the author, and then that has to be the same element that introducing the entry in the list of works cited. For example, the author Irwin, you have been working with a biodegradable plastic that eats itself by Eileen Irwin. Irwin is the name of the author. You could say, for example, Irwin mentions, and then introduce a quote, and then in the list of works cited you have to start by Irwin, Eileen, the name of the article, the name of the magazine, and the remaining elements that you have to cover in the list of works cited. What is meant by source integration? It means summarizing, paraphrasing, or making a synthesis of an original and inserting that source into your own text. How many patterns of integrations are there? The three that we have seen, the ones that we have seen, there are 7. How to make concurrent citations is a very interesting question that I got in the video conference. That if we are citing the same author in the same paragraph and the citations are one very close to the other, do we need to mention the author all the time, or can we introduce the author in our first line and then continue with the quote? I'm explaining the process here. I'm giving you different options to handle this. For example, you can mention the source with the name of the article and the name of the author, and then continue with the quotation if they are very close in your text. So you don't need to keep on referring to the name of the author, because the reader is going to understand that you're citing the same source. I continue with how to cite an article that appears online and doesn't have a page number, and we practice this in the forum, but I feel that I need to present the example here and to explain what we do. You don't have to duplicate information. If the article doesn't have page number and you introduce the author in your line, you don't have to give any other reference in parentheses. It's enough with the last name of the author as the lead word. The same with the if the article doesn't have an author, when do we name in parentheses the name of the magazine? Just in case that you're working with two sources by the same author. What type of information doesn't need to be cited? Common knowledge, common information, what elements to include in the list of works cited when documenting an online magazine, how to truncate a URL is by keeping, if you're working with a long string, you may truncate the string, leaving only the critical elements, the ones that are going to help the reader find the article. There's some other part of the string that are not necessary to be included. So if this is a trial and error thing, you copy the link and then you chop it off, and then until you see that the link that you're providing is the one that actually leads the reader to the work site, to the article online. So here are all the questions that I consider relevant as a way to conclude the second participation forum and the second video conference. So you have it all here. Please read this before you start writing your second writing assignment. I'm very excited because I know that many of you are very much into the topic that we have been discussing this summer, and so I would like you to read these two resources now and to get back to me in case you're in doubt. Remember, if you need assistance, don't hesitate to contact me.